Let's talk about Broadcom, stock symbol AVGO. This stock is absolutely getting pummeled. And in this video, what I want to do is I want to go through the stock. I want to look at the technical levels where we might be looking at a potential bounce because it's down 6% this year. Going back to its all-time highs, it's down 25%, like NVIDIA, also down 25%. We're going to look at the broader market picture as well as the sector that it's trading in to see what kind of pressures that we're seeing there as well and how that might impact the stock as a whole. So let's go ahead and get right into the stock here. So looking at AVGO, the big thing that I was watching for a long time now has been this huge gap that was formed off of this earnings report. This was back in December. It shot up big time going from, and this is really what put it on the map for a lot of people, going from 184 all the way up to 251. Huge move. Really, a lot of people started FOMOing into it after that point. But like all gaps, they usually get filled. And in this case, we started to fill it right here back in January, but then we bounced higher. So then we had this gap that was left unfilled and really looked like the stock was just going to forget about it until just recently when it started to make that downturn again. Today, it filled that gap. So now we can go ahead and get rid of that gap. But what's so interesting about this gap is that there's also a key price level support that goes right across it. You can see where it's tested this level of support on multiple occasions in the past, going back to October and again in November, and it started back in June of last year. Now, here in the beginning of March, it's getting tested yet again. So that's a big level here to watch going forward here with this support level. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this box here now that we have that price level support established. You also have a lot of support at this 200-day moving average. We tested it back in September. It held. Tested it back in August. It held. And that was a big key event back in August when we had that massive sell-off. So there's not a lot else to really speak of with the 200-day moving average. Yeah, you had some instances in early 2022 and going back to even 2021 where it did test and hold that 200-day moving average. But for the most part, we've seen recently as late as August of last year and September of last year where it actually did test and hold. Also along those same lines is you have a rising trend line. So this rising trend line is now converging with this price level support too. So you have this rising trend line that connects the two lows from August and September, and again from the one here in late November. Now you have a potential test not only with this rising trend line, but the 200-day moving average and this price level support to where even possibly on an intraday basis, it could dip below, hold both of these levels here, and then finish back above price level support being this yellow line. That would probably be the major levels that I would be watching on the stock going into tomorrow and in the days ahead, because there's a very good chance those levels get tested, especially if we get some follow through. What you want to start to watch for is whether or not you can get all three things here: the test, the hold, and the bounce. You want to see it test these levels, you want to see it hold these levels, and then bounce off of these levels. And the closing price is going to be the most important aspect of it. And then after you get all those three, you also want to watch for, okay, can we get that continuation? Because if you get the continuation from the bounce the following day, that's showing that there's a lot of more conviction to this trade to let the stock continue to rally in the days that follow. Pretty decent volume down here. You could see where we were above average volume, but it wasn't quite the kind of volume that we saw from Friday when we got that bounce. But nonetheless, we're testing the key support level. Very important going forward. Also, rising trend line right here. If these three levels right here start to fall apart, then you have this rising trend line underneath that could come into play at 160. But beyond that, you're not talking about a lot of other support levels. Essentially, what happened going back to 2022 lows is once the lows were established back in late 2022, it went on a parabolic ripper. And what oftentimes will happen with these kinds of moves is they return to earth in a really hard and quick fashion. So if this market was to get into a much bigger correction, and I'm not saying that we're definitely going in that direction, I think there's a good chance that we see a significant pullback at some point here over the course of this year or next. But if we get something into like a .com kind of bubble burst, yes, I would expect that we would pull back down to like this 64 level, but that's not necessarily in the here or now. I think that's a long ways off, not even worth getting worked up about or even trying to trade or speculate on. What we want to watch for going forward is these three price levels right here. And look, you take a view of XLK. What do you have going on right now here? You have the tech sector breaking down. It's breaking below this key support level right here. And then on SMH, when you look at what's been going on here, going back to really September of last year, it's been trading in essentially a sideways chop. But now what's changing here is the fact that we're breaking down below this sideways range. So there is a significant change in the direction of the sector ETF SMH for the semiconductors that we haven't seen going all the way back to September. So you're talking about like what, 6 months or so? And now all of a sudden we're starting to break down and there's not a lot of support underneath for the semiconductors. Yes, you can maybe say like 203. That's, close to like 8 or 9% away, but there's not a lot of support that you can depend on for this stock here. You go look at, we've talked about XLK, we've talked about SMH, and if you look at SPY, the same thing's going on there with SPY where we're testing some significant levels. You have the AVGO off of the August lows. SPY sold off and tested that here today. So there's a potential bounce opportunity there, but we're also starting to see a potential change where if we take out these lows from January, there's a very good chance at that point we're going to see a much bigger correction in the market. So I am a little bit concerned, even though that AVGO has an opportunity here in the days that follow to bounce off of these three support levels in some capacity. There's a much bigger bearishness that's developing, not only in the semiconductor industry, but also within the tech space and also in the broader markets as a whole. Finally, one thing I would tell you is looking at the AVWAP on AVGO, we can also see that there may be some support at these lows that were formed in December of 2023. Right here, you can see where we tested in March of 2024. Again, that same year in April, again in later that month, early May, tested it in August, tested it again in September. If this sell-off continues, this AVWAP converges pretty well with this rising trend line as that goes back to October. These three levels fail, I would look for this to be the next support level for AVGO. As always with this market, you have to plan out your trades. You have to have a way that you're going to manage the risk. If this is something that you're looking to play the bounce on, you think that it's fallen way too much here in recent days and that it's setting up for a bounce, you still have to know where you're going to get out before you ever get in. If the trade doesn't work in your favor, and you should assume that, where are you going to get out of the trade at? That's such a key thing for managing risk appropriately, is to know where you're going to get out before you ever get in. And also, in this kind of a market where you're seeing pressure across the board from the market, from the sectors, from the industries, even if AVGO is set up to bounce really well here, if the sector and if the industry and the market as a whole doesn't also follow in line, there's a very good chance that AVGO is not going to either. Let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed this video, and also make sure to like and subscribe. What is your plans here with AVGO? Are you currently holding on to this position, or are you waiting for a better opportunity for it to go much lower? Maybe are you looking at 160? Are you looking at 180, or even something much more cataclysmic than that? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys, and God bless.